حرب امتدت عامين على قطاع غزة شكلت محطة فاصلة في مسار الصراع الفلسطيني الإسرائيلي، ودفعت بالقضية الفلسطينية إلى مرحلة جديدة تتبدل فيها السياقات وتزداد فيها الآفاق غموضا. هذه الحرب كشفت عن محاولات ممنهجة لفرض وقائع جديدة على الأرض
new realities on the ground, demographically and geographically, and has raised deep questions regarding the future of the Palestinian cause and the possibility of reaching a settlement that is fair and just in light of the discrepancy in the balance of powers and a conflict that the military power was not able to settle. For the next 3 days, the Jazeera Forum seeks to deal with the geopolitical and strategic changes that are witnessed in the Middle East to be discussed and their reflection on the balance of power regionally and internationally, in where crises are being even deeper and other roles, regional and international, are on the rise. So this is a space for open dialogue and exchange of visions and raising questions at pivotal points in the history of the world and the region, which is a tradition that has been a custom by Al Jazeera. Welcome to you all in Qatar and to Doha of intellectual thinking and dialogue. We start with calling His Excellency Sheikh Hamad bin Thamir Al Thani, Chairman of the Board of Directors of Al Jazeera Media Network, to deliver his remarks. You have the floor. In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful. Excellencies, esteemed guests, I'm glad to welcome you all in Doha to this 17th Al Jazeera Forum, and your presence honors us, and I welcome specifically His Excellency Dr. Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, President of the Republic of Somalia, and the Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Abbas Araqchi, and the Chairman of the Communications Department in the Presidency of Turkey, Burhan ad-Din Duran, and welcome to all of you, and it is a source of honor for us, your presence. Esteemed guests, this forum comes at a time where there are big questions and big transformations, and this has an important theme which reflects a new reality that is being formulated in front of our eyes, where power and the law intersect, and also we see changes in the region as well. And there is a possibility that there is a trajectory to face more challenges in our region. In this context, the value of this forum is not only limited to our meeting, but rather to the quality of the discussion that we produce together. A discussion that realizes that big issues are not contained in a black and white discussion, but rather a critical discussion and analysis, and raising questions that bring about more wise decisions in the future. Esteemed guests, the Palestinian cause during the past 2 years of war by Israel on Gaza that has put it on a pivotal point the Israeli occupation seeks to reoccupy Gaza by displacing its people or settling parts of it and confiscating parts of the West Bank in order to settle the issue once and for all and to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. So these events have led to the Palestinian cause being at the forefront of the international attention when it was about to be disappearing between settlements that would lead to the Palestinians losing all their rights. Genocide in Gaza now is really being met with depth and sympathy worldwide, and a championship move from the whole world that has never been witnessed before. So the Palestinian cause now is an international request where people in the East and the West are trying to go with recognizing this conflict as one that will not be settled by wars. Al Jazeera hosting this forum is an extension of its main mission, which is to be belonging to the people and the viewers, and a bridge that links events with their contexts. As we know, Al Jazeera has sacrificed to a great deal in shedding light on what's happening in the world, and they paid a heavy and dear price of its correspondents. We know the number of the correspondents and reporters who have been martyred in Palestine, in Syria, and Iraq, and Libya, and Yemen. We lost reporters who have provided the ultimate price, which is their life, for the sake of the truth. And they were targeted only because they wanted to report the truth to the world. And the last example on that in Gaza is a witness to that. So we remember those martyrs who have put forward and sacrificed their life for the sake of the truth to be reported to the whole world, and Al Jazeera is still going with reporting the truth to the world with its arsenal of great reporters and correspondents seeking to report the whole truth to the world. We know that the media nowadays is facing a real test because there is content and the narrative and the speed and the accuracy. That's why we believe that professionalism is not just a formality, but rather it's the source of trust and the influence and the guaranteeing of the presence that stands the test of time. In conclusion, I thank our guests once again, and I thank those panelists and all colleagues in the network for the effort that they have exerted in order to produce this forum in the way that it deserves, and I'm confident that this will be a space for the exchanging of views, and it will open new windows in order to have common understanding. Thank you. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Sheikh Hamad bin Samir Al Thani. Now, His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Somalia, Dr. Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, will be our next speaker. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, may the blessings of Allah be upon His Messenger and upon you all, ladies and gentlemen.
Your Highnesses, Your Majesties, it's a great honor and privilege to join you all for the 17th Al Jazeera Forum in this beautiful city of Doha, the capital of the brotherly state of Qatar. Indeed, this innovative forum continues to play a major role in the global governance, peace and security and economic development by bringing the most relevant, knowledgeable stakeholders together in one place to debate the main issues in depth globally. Overall, Al Jazeera Media Network is among the most trusted, viewed media source internationally because of its true commitment to quality journalism, which educates, informs, and most importantly, challenges the dominant narrative by giving all a voice. Congratulations and long may this brave, cutting-edge, and honest journalism continue into the future. The 17th edition of this forum rightly focuses on the major questions raised by the Israel's destructive war on Gaza and the role of the Arab world and all the responsible international stakeholders to bring this horrendous suffering of the Palestinian people to the end. What we have seen in our own eyes happening in Gaza was another level of inhumane engagement in the history of the world. This must remain an international priority despite all other challenges globally, simply because without an equitable, legal, durable solution based on the two-state solution that the world has been advocating for long, it will otherwise be a recurrent misfortune that the world will experience more. This situation will just escalate further, endangering the fragile regional stability and progress. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a truly turbulent and uncertain times where everything we know is changing rapidly. Some changes are positive, like the advancements in technology, healthcare, and science, while others are very much concerning. Key among the global concerns is the weakening of the established rules based on international order. That order is not intact anymore. That order, which while not completely perfect, guided the world in a positive way. Although it's not completely perfect, but lays out a means through which all nation states can coexist, collaborate, and cooperate amicably. The established international law and diplomatic norms on respecting national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and promoting peace among nations is under threat right now. An experience that the world has passed in a very old times is appearing again. The mighty is right. The institutions we agreed on to safeguard these sacred rules and values after the Second World War, like the United Nations, are under grave threat. Multilateralism as a whole appears to be retreating when it's needed more than ever to assert itself and respond to an existential common challenges which threaten all humanity today. This is a dangerous and not a situation that we can be in for much longer. The world has to wake up and stand against the perpetrators of the international norms. We must reflect, reevaluate, and return to the path of common purpose and agreed universal rules. This will ensure global stability, sustainable development, and purposeful multilateralism is maintained and advanced again. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in Somalia, we are broadly contributing to regional security and stability by bravely continuing the successful fight against international terrorism in our country. Through a systemic military, ideological, and financial strategy of action, we are actively defeating the twin criminals of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Our sacrifices in this endeavor are not for Somalia alone. It is for the security and stability of all, particularly in our region and the wider world. In this regard, we remain grateful for the support of all our international partners in this objective of defeating the terror. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Red Sea is a fundamental for global security, stability, and trade. It's a space shared by many nations, including Somalia, which can impede global stability and advance economic development through commerce. The Red Sea is an economic artery for the prosperity and opportunity when strategically and cooperatively utilized. However, the Red Sea security remains challenged by regional tensions, destabilizing geopolitical posturing, and dangerous meddling, like in the case of Israel illegally interfering with Somalia's sovereignty and territorial integrity in December last year. This reckless and fundamentally wrong and illegal action under international law undermines stability, security, and trade in a way that affects the Horn of Africa, the Red Sea, and the wider world. It's not only violating the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Somalia. The action of Israel challenges the very fundamental existing of the African continent and what Africa has agreed, the African Union Constitutive Chart, which recognizes all the African borders and clearly rejected the secessionism and violation of established borders. Going forward, the Somali government and people are committed to continuing our successful state-building process with a renewed focus on inclusive politics, economic development, institution building, and productive international partnership. The Somali people have suffered a long time, but now the light is at hand. Our government is standing firmly by the principles of the international law, which safeguards national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and collaboration for global public goods. We strongly warn against a deterioration of the existing international rule-based order, which can easily return the whole world to the dark past wars, instability, and displacement we seek to never return to our world. We also should never return to the era where might is always right. The Palestinian people's cause is a good example for that. In conclusion, I think that when it comes to global governance, regional stability, trade, poverty reduction, it's not only the nation states that should speak. Room must be made for civil society, media, intellectuals, lawmakers, and anybody who or organization that can add value to that cause. I once again congratulate the Al Jazeera Media Network for organizing this successful forum and wish you all the successful deliberations in the coming days. I thank you all. Thank you.
شكرا لفخامة الرئيس حسن.
Thank you, Your Excellency Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, the President of Somalia. He just returned from very important talks in the context of peacemaking in this area and coming back from the Sultanate of Oman. We invite His Excellency Abbas Araqchi, the Foreign Minister of Iran, to deliver his remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Your Excellency Sheikh Hamad bin Samir Al Thani, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a privilege to address you at this distinguished forum and discuss the profound question of our region, Palestine. Let me begin with the fact that the region has learned through decades of painful experience, and that the world is learning again at a terrible human cost. Palestine is not one issue among many. Palestine is the defining question of justice in West Asia and beyond. It is the strategic and moral compass of our region. It is a test of whether international law has meaning, whether human rights have universal value, and whether global institutions exist to protect the weak or merely to rationalize the power of the strong. For generations, the Palestinian crisis was understood primarily as the consequence of an illegal occupation and the denial of an inalienable right, the right of a people to self-determination. But today, we must recognize that the crisis has moved far beyond the parameters of occupation alone. What we are witnessing in Gaza is not merely war. It is not a conflict between equal parties. It is not an unfortunate byproduct of security measures. It is the deliberate destruction of civilian life on a massive scale. It is genocide. The human cost of Israel's atrocities in Gaza has wounded the conscience of humanity. It has torn open the heart of the Muslim world, and it has also shaken millions beyond it, Christians, Jews, and people of all faiths, who still believe that the life of a child is not a bargaining chip, that starvation is not a weapon, that hospitals are not battlefields, and that the killing of families is not self-defense. Palestine today is not simply a tragedy. It is a mirror held up to the world. It reflects not only the suffering of Palestinians, but also the moral failure of those who had the power to stop this catastrophe and choose instead to justify it, enable it, or normalize it. But Palestine and Gaza is not only a humanitarian crisis. It has become the platform for something larger and more dangerous, an expansionist project pursued under the banner of security. The project has three consequences, each of them profound, each of them alarming. The first consequence is global. The Israeli regime's conduct in Palestine and the impunity granted to it have deeply damaged the international legal order. We must say this clearly. The world is moving toward a condition where international law no longer is respected and governs international relations. What is perhaps most dangerous is the precedent being established that if a state has sufficient political cover and protection, it may bomb civilians, besiege populations, target infrastructures, assassinate individuals across borders, and still demand to be regarded as lawful. This is not merely a Palestinian problem, it is a global problem. We are witnessing not only the tragedy of Palestine, but the transformation of the world into a place where the law is replaced by force. The second consequence is regional. Israel's expansionist project has had a direct and destabilizing impact on the security of all countries in the region. The Israeli regime now openly violates borders. It breaches sovereignties. It assassinates official dignitaries. It conducts terrorist operations. It expands its reach in multiple theaters. And it does so not discreetly, but with a sense of entitlement, because it has learned that international accountability will not come. Let us be candid. If the Gaza issue is settled through destruction and forced displacement, If that becomes the model, then the West Bank will be the next. Annexation will become policy. This is the essence of what has long been called the Greater Israel. The question, therefore, is not whether Israel's actions threaten Palestinians alone. The question is whether the region will accept a future in which borders are temporary, sovereignty is conditional, and security is determined not by law or diplomacy, but by the ambitions of a militarized occupier. The third consequence is structural, and perhaps the most dangerous. Israel's expansionist project requires that neighboring countries be weakened, militarily, technologically, economically, and socially, so that the Israeli regime permanently enjoys the upper hand. Under this project, Israel is free to expand its military arsenal without limits, including weapons of mass destruction that remain outside any inspection regime. Yet, other countries are demanded to disarm. Others are pressured to reduce defensive capacity. Others are punished for scientific progress. Others are sanctioned for building resilience. Nobody should be confused. This is not arms control. It is not non-proliferation. It is not security. It is the enforcement of permanent inequality. Israel must have a military, intelligence, and a strategic edge, and others must remain vulnerable. This is a doctrine of domination. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why the Palestinian question is not only a humanitarian issue, it is a strategic issue. It is not only about Gaza and the West Bank, it is about the future of our region and the rules of the world. So what must be done? It is not enough to express concern. It is not enough to issue statements. It is not enough to mourn. We need a coordinated strategy of action. Legal, diplomatic, economic, and security-based, rooted in the principles of international law and collective responsibility. First, the international community must support legal mechanisms without hesitation. Second, there must be consequences for violations. We call for comprehensive and targeted sanctions against Israel, including an immediate arms embargo, the suspension of military and intelligence cooperation, restrictions on officials, and banning trade. Third, we need a credible political horizon grounded in law. The international community must affirm the end of occupation, the right of return and compensation in accordance with international law, and the establishment of a unified and independent Palestinian state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. Fourth, the humanitarian crisis must be treated as a matter of urgent international responsibility. Collective punishment must never be normalized. Fifth, regional states must coordinate to protect sovereignty and deter aggression. The principle must be clear. Security cannot be built on the insecurity of others. And finally, the Islamic world, the Arab world, and the nations of the global South must build a united diplomatic front. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Arab League, and the regional organizations must move beyond symbolism toward coordinated action. Legal support, diplomatic initiatives, economic measures, and strategic messaging. This is not about confrontation. It is about preventing the region from being reshaped by force. Dear colleagues, let no one miscalculate. A region cannot be kept stable by allowing one actor to act above the law. The doctrine of impunity will not produce peace. It will produce wider conflict. The path to stability is clear. Justice for Palestine, accountability for crimes, an end to occupation and apartheid, and a regional order built on sovereignty, equality, and cooperation. If the world wants peace, it must stop rewarding aggression. If the world wants stability, it must stop enabling expansionism. If the world believes in international law, it must enforce it consistently and without double standards. And if the nations of this region seek a future free from perpetual war, they must recognize these fundamental truths. Palestine is not merely a cause for solidarity, it is the indispensable cornerstone of regional security. Thank you so much for your attention.
شكرا سعادة الدكتور عباس.
Thank you, Your Excellency Abbas Araqchi. Now we call Dr. Burhanuddin Duran, Head of the Directorate of Communications of the Republic of Turkey. You have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a profound honor to join you at the 17th Al Jazeera Forum at a moment when our region and our world stand at a historic crossroads. I extend my deepest gratitude to the organizers, partners, and all participants for organizing this timely forum. We are gathered in Doha to address one of the defining questions of our time, the Palestinian cause and the regional balance of power in the context of an emerging multipolar world. This theme compels us to confront not only the devastating realities, Israeli genocide in Gaza, but also the deeper transformation of the international system itself. Dear participants, for more than 2 decades, we have been told that the world is in transition, that we are moving from one global order to another. Today, that narrative is no longer sufficient. The world is not just transitioning, it has already transitioned. We are living through the consequences of a historic rupture. The assumptions that once structured the post-war international system have fractured. Norms that define the limits of acceptable behavior have weakened. Pandemics have exposed the fragility of global governance. Genocide, in the case of Israeli genocide, has returned to the center of international politics, not as an exception, but as a tolerated reality. International institutions designed to prevent these strategies failed publicly, repeatedly, and structurally. As we move into 2026, the international system is characterized by fragmentation, competition, and institutional fatigue. Great power rivalry increasingly dominates global agendas. In this environment, uncertainty is now structural reality. What fundamentally distinguishes our era is the full integration of information warfare into the logic of conflict itself. Wars are no longer confined to physical battlefields. They are fought through narratives, digital platforms, and perception management. Technology companies, platform owners, and algorithm designers have emerged as powerful non-state actors capable of shaping political outcomes without democratic accountability. Algorithm control has introduced a new form of domination. It determines what is visible, what is credible, and what disappears. At this point, we must confront a fundamental question. What principle can generate order when hierarchy breaks down, institutions weaken, and power fragments? The answer is justice, not just as a moral aspiration, but as an organizing principle of political order. Justice produces legitimacy. Where justice exists, order is internalized rather than imposed. But justice cannot exist without truth, and truth cannot survive without conditions that protect it. Our region carries a civilizational legacy that binds truth and justice together. From Al-Farabi to Ibn Khaldun, our intellectual tradition teaches us that civilizations endure not through domination, but through legitimacy, cohesion, and moral purpose. Distinguished guests, the Middle East today is experiencing multiple and overlapping crises. The center of gravity is shifting. Influence today is no longer measured solely in military terms. It is defined by economic capacity, diplomatic networks, reconstruction leverage, and coalition-building ability. Secondly, the boundaries between security and humanitarian domains have collapsed. Humanitarian crises are no longer merely accompany wars, they shape strategic outcomes. Third, while regional actors now possess unprecedented diplomatic and economic capacity, coordination remains the central challenge. Without collective action, individual power cannot generate durable stability. Fourth, the day after has become as strategic as the war itself. Gaza and Syria reminds us that wars are not concluded by ceasefires alone, but by governance arrangements, reconstruction frameworks, and political pathways. In this critical juncture, Turkey's vision is anchored in the principle of regional ownership, a strategic framework that prioritizes local agency, operationalizes regional diplomacy, and strengthens collective capacity. As you all know, regional problems demand regional solutions. Our region now stands at such a juncture that either it resolves its internal fractures through cooperation, justice, and shared responsibility, or it turns inward, competing, fragmenting, and exporting instability outward. If regional actors fail to manage their own conflicts, they do not remain local. They become fuel for global anarchy. In this sense, our region is no longer just affected by the crisis of the international system. It is positioned to either mitigate that crisis or deepen it. Esteemed guests, there is no doubt that our region is facing precisely such conditions in resulting an unprecedented wave of insecurity. This insecurity spans military conflict, humanitarian catastrophe, economic pressure, information warfare, and political polarization. In Gaza, this wave of insecurity is visible in its starkest form: mass devastation, deep trauma, genocide, and humanitarian collapse. In this context, regional and Gulf actors possess decisively tools: diplomatic leverage, reconstruction capacity, mediation channels, and consensus-building authority. I believe that we must unite around two absolute non-negotiables: bringing this war to an end and preventing any form of displacement. Second, we must actively shape the day after by putting forward credible governance frameworks, rather than having a vacuum that could easily be filled by destabilizing agendas. Third, we must ensure that reconstruction is firmly linked to political viability, effective protection mechanisms, and lasting stability. As Turkey, we have taken a series of concrete steps to ensure that our region contributes to global stability in peace and security in this new era. And we invite all countries in the region to share in this common responsibility. Our core conviction is that stability can only be achieved through inclusive cooperation, mutual trust, and collective wisdom. We have taken significant initiatives to establish the mechanisms needed to resolve all disputes and disagreements in our region through dialogue and diplomacy. From the normalization process between Azerbaijan and Armenia to relations between Somalia and Ethiopia, from the grain corridor agreement implemented between Ukraine and Russia to the facilitating role we assumed during the recent Iran crisis. All of the examples are manifesting this initiative. At a time when the world is becoming increasingly complex, we are encouraging the formation of an inclusive and sustainable regional security architecture. We believe this architecture must not only be capable of producing solutions to inter-regional challenges, but also of building a shared capacity to respond to threats originating beyond the region. In addition, we are devoting sustained effort to the recovery, reconstruction, and rebuilding of countries that have suffered profound devastation due to civil wars. The stabilization of Syria and the strengthening of institutional capacity are central to these efforts. We believe a similar approach should be implemented for Yemen and Sudan once hostilities end. Moreover, to ensure these initiatives yield lasting and effective outcomes, we attach particular importance to institutionalization and continue to advance these efforts through various initiatives and multilateral platforms. Also, we are contributing to the establishment of diverse cooperation mechanisms to address the new wave of risks and insecurities in our region. Through all these efforts, we aim to build an information, knowledge, and diplomacy ecosystem of our own. We want this ecosystem to reflect the realities of our region, foster collective wisdom, and contribute to the emergence of a more balanced global order. Finally, we will continue our work with determination both in bilateral and multilateral engagements and in comparable international forums to develop a shared language for peace and stability. Dear friends, for too long, this region has been narrated by others, framed through crisis, fear, and Orientalism. That era must now end. Narrative is power. Whoever defines meaning shapes order. Our region must reclaim authorship of its own story. Of course, not to mythologize itself, but to articulate with clarity and confidence its civilizational mission in this moment of global rupture. This is why Turkey's call under the leadership of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan that a fairer world is possible resonates so deeply. It is not merely a declaration of hope, it's a strategic horizon, a conviction that justice must consciously construct it. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude my remarks, allow me to emphasize one final point. The world has already changed. The responsibility before us is to ensure that it changes in the right direction. This requires cooperation across borders, resistance to algorithmic domination, defense of truth, restoration of justice, and the courage to imagine a new global order grounded in dignity and legitimacy. This is how truth becomes justice. This is how justice becomes order. And this is how a region once spoken about becomes a region that speaks for itself. Thank you for your kind attention. I extend my deepest appreciation to our hosts, the organizers of this distinguished forum, and to all participants for their valuable contributions. I hope that our deliberations today will not only enrich our understanding, but also inspire collective action toward a more just, peaceful, and humane international order. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency Burhan Ad-Din Duran, for your remarks. Once again, welcome to all of you to Al Jazeera Forum. Now we take a break for 15 minutes, then we resume the first session of this forum. Thank you.